Starting today, my office will aggressively prosecute parents under D.C.'s curfew law. It involves contributing to the delinquency of a minor. This statute makes it unlawful for an adult to enable, facilitate, or permit a minor to engage in delinquent acts.
On Friday, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Jeanine Pirro, announced parents could face criminal charges in connection with those teen takeovers in the district. And then the following night, we saw this, a chaotic scene of violence inside a Chipotle in the Navy Yard. So we want to take a closer look at this question. How much accountability should be placed on parents for these type of incidents? Joining us now is Professor Eve Brank, a professor of law and psychology at the University of Nebraska, who studied extensively the effectiveness of parental responsibility laws. Professor, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And let's just start. We just played a clip of that video for our viewers to see there from over the weekend. You've seen some of the pictures of this, the teens in the restaurant. You know, when I watched it, one appears to be holding a chair over their head, like wrestling style. Others are outside getting videos of this brawl with their phones. This is a large group. What is your reaction to this?
I'm sure it was very, very frightening for the people around. It certainly is a scary scene to watch.
Yeah, and we've been talking endlessly of how to deter teen violence, suggestions like curfews to outlets for teens, opportunities for them to channel that energy. Do you believe making parents potentially criminally responsible is part of the solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we just don't know for sure from the empirical research. There hasn't been any strong empirical studies that have been done to examine it. I think we all would like to believe that parents could have an important positive impact, and they certainly do, but there's also some concerns with how this might disproportionately impact some parents over others. And I think one of the other big issues is the requirement in the law that is being referenced, the requirement that the parents need to have, a certain mental state, that they need to have assisted, facilitated, done something in order to contribute directly to the teens' behaviors.
Yeah, let's widen out here and get into your research a little bit more. You've spoken with teens too. Can you walk us through their process, their thought process through all of this?
Sure. We did a study a number of years ago with teens who had actually been adjudicated delinquent, and we talked with them about their opinions of parental responsibility and how much they felt their parents were blameworthy and responsible and should be punished for their actions. And for the most part, the teens were not that supportive of those kinds of actions towards parents.
Did teens believe, I guess on the other side of that, did teens believe that they should take accountability? Was it a case of, don't punish my parents, I did this is on me? Did they have that kind of thought development there? That would be a very mature perspective.
Sure. And certainly, we're talking about average responses, right? But certainly many teens, many of the youth did have those kinds of responses where they were able to recognize that the actions were their own, or sometimes the influence of their peers, and so that they focused on that a little bit more than, or quite a bit more than, holding their parents responsible.
And there are so many facets to this, as you alluded to there. You said, some fear that this could disproportionately impact certain groups of parents. On the other end of the conversation, some are worried or reluctant to punish parents. Obviously, that would be one of the factors there, but why do you think that is?
Why would people be reluctant to punish parents? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that I always think about is who this might impact the most, right? And so, for example, if you have a single mom, they might be punished, but the other parent isn't there and available, right, to be punished. And so we're punishing the one parent who is there and potentially really trying to be a good parent. So I think there's some reluctance among scholars who study this to, think about who this could disproportionately impact.
When it comes to the issues that we're having in DC, these teen takeovers, what are the factors that we need to be focusing on that, according to your research, likely contribute to this?
Boy, we know that certainly parents have an impact in raising their children, but by the time youth are the ages that seemed like were in the pictures and videos, right? Peers certainly have a really big impact on youth behaviors, and I know that there's been discussion of trying to make sure that the kids have positive outlets that they can focus on, and that certainly is something that I know a lot of research suggests can be helpful.
And Professor, lastly, of course, the conversation immediately involves parents and these teenagers, but also society. And we're seeing, everyone in the restaurant and people in that neighborhood being impacted. What direction do you believe we all need to steer as a society in light of these teen takeovers that we see keep happening here in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I'm sure it's quite frightening if you're in these neighborhoods. Sure. Or yourself around these places. And so, I think the more we can focus on what we know works, and creating positive opportunities for the youth is certainly one thing we have seen that does work, would be helpful. Yeah.
Professor Eve Brank with the University of Nebraska, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here this afternoon and speak on your work and your research on this topic.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Take care and stay with us.